It's the final week of Utah Spring Football. What are the biggest questions the team needs to answer? We're talking about it on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. On today's show, we're going to be talking about Utah Gymnastics finishing third in the NCAA Championships. But first, we got to talk about Utah Spring Football. And in order to help us dive into all of that, it's friend of the show and Utes Zone contributor, Sammy Mora. And Sammy, starting with Utah football, I think the biggest question I still have going into the spring game is what most people's biggest question was going into spring ball in general is who is quarterback two, who is officially going to lock it down. It sounds like Brandon Rose is the front runner right now. And by the next time we hear Kyle Whittingham talk, we'll see if he is open enough to say he likes to keep stuff close to the vest. So we'll see if he's willing to share enough that he declared there was a slight edge for Brandon. And he said that Bryson was nipping at Brandon's heels as recently as the most recent media availability we had. But like I said, I expect it to be Brandon, but I think Bryson's got a chance to go out there, especially if Brandon struggles. We heard that neither of them had a great scrimmage a couple weeks back. So it's a great opportunity for both these guys. I'm sure the fans are really excited to get a look at them. And I think it's going to be great to see how Brandon and Bryson perform. And who knows what Nate's health is at this point. Kyle Whittingham has talked about a little bit that he hasn't been able to practice as of recently. So we'll see how many reps he's able to get. But especially in terms of Brandon versus Bryson, I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see how that plays out during this week.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, like things came out of the scrimmage that neither one of the quarterbacks looked especially fantastic. I'm excited to see. Actually, I'm excited to see all four of the quarterbacks, maybe five. It depends on if we see how much we see of certain guys, because I don't know how much we'll see of like a guy like Mac Howard, who I am personally a huge fan of. He's the 4-star freshman from Mississippi, but I think if Nate does play, it's going to be him, Brandon, and Bryson who get majority of the reps. Obviously, it's going to be interesting to see how they split the quarterbacks up for the roster. That's what I'm interested to see. I know that's like something weird, but it's like, are they gonna if Nate's available, are they gonna put him with Brandon or are they gonna put him with Bryson? So I think that's going to be interesting to see. I also someone that people haven't talked a lot about is Luke Bottari. Like he actually he's made some really good throws in practice.
Yes.
And I know that he's more likely for a candidate for scout team quarterback, but still like he's made some big time throws when like the other quarterbacks haven't. Like we didn't see, if I remember correctly, we didn't see any of him or Mac Howard at that last scrimmage that we had. But when he does like get in there, he's making some good plays. But I think honestly at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if Whit pushes this into fall, just because Nate has been injured for a good chunk of it, and I think he wants this to be a fair battle. Like both guys available, both guys ready to go. So I wouldn't be surprised if this drags on into fall. I hate to use the word drags, but I think, because I don't think it's a dragging situation. I think it's like it's something that needs to be addressed, and I think that the coaches are going to not sit on it, but I think they're going to take their time and really try and figure out and make sure they have the right guy back there. Because whoever it is, if Utah's in like those garbage time minutes, that's the guy that's going to be taking majority of the reps in those garbage time like sequences. And I think even if you are in a garbage situation, like a garbage time situation, you still want to have your best players out there, even if it is your second string. And so I think this is going to be something that carries on into fall, just to make it like make a more informed decision with more time available, because I think the short duration of fall camp or of spring camp, in my opinion, I don't think it's enough, especially now that Nate got hurt. I kind of think this is going to be an issue. It's going to be something that we talk about in fall as well.
Yeah, that absolutely will be. And Sammy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they announced at this time last year when it was Bryson Barnes versus Jaquindon Jackson. I don't think they said after who was the leader, and we didn't get it until a few weeks into fall camp when they had a scrimmage. And then after that, he told us that Bryson had won the job.
No, we got it. We got it in fall, before fall camp when the initial
I'm saying, did we get it after the spring game?
We got it. So we got it. We didn't get it after the spring game. We got it after the final, like after one of the first couple of practices from fall camp, when the initial first 2 deep came out, is when we got it. So like, even if like Whit does know who it's gonna be after this spring game, he's not gonna say. That's not who he is. And I think that this is something that him and the staff are gonna keep close to their chest until fall. I mean, that's what I think. It's a Whit thing. Like, it's a Whitism. He's not going to tell you. He's not going to flash you his cards if he can't. And especially with, like, is Cam going to be available for Florida? Like, is he going to be ready to go for Florida? I think that he's going to drag this out for as long as possible so that Florida is on their toes. Because either way, no matter who is the starting quarterback that Florida week, if it's not Cam, they're not going to have a lot of film. Like, for Bryson, they're going to have the Washington State game. They're going to have, when Cam got hurt in the Rose Bowl, they're going to have some, both times Cam got hurt in the Rose Bowl, they're going to have, like, garbage time from games throughout the season. For Nate, you're just going to have a lot of, like wildcat plays. You're not going to have to see a lot of passing options from him. And then from Brandon, you're not going to have anything. You are not going to have anything for Brandon. So I think that's another thing that people need to be thinking about, is Whit's going to keep this as close to his chest for as long as he possibly can. Especially with the reports coming out of Florida's camp that their quarterbacks do not look good. Like, both of them that are competing for the starting job. Like, that's their starting job situation. Like, this is a backup job situation for Utah, but it's potentially going to be a starting job position depending on if Cam is available for that Florida game. So I wouldn't see a formal announcement coming out after spring. I wouldn't see a formal announcement coming out until maybe first or second week of fall ball, maybe not even until the week of the first game. Like, I don't know, especially because it's just Kyle Whittingham. You never know what he's going to do with this.
Exactly. That's how he's always acted. It's how most college coaches act too. They like to keep their information as close to the vest as they can regarding quarterbacks, even in-season availability. I remember an Oklahoma student reporter like 2 years ago got in trouble because he went to practice with binoculars. It was like spying on Spencer Rattler and messaging with the dad or something. Got in tons of trouble. But college coaches, they're very tight to the vest with all the information revolving their players, quarterbacks in general. Also, just because you brought him up, Graham Mertz, who's probably, just from what like you said, it's still an open competition for Florida. I'd be surprised if it wasn't Mertz. Mertz is the first quarterback I've ever seen. And if Mertz lights up Utah and someone wants to come back to this and clip it, that's totally fine. He's the first quarterback I've ever seen to peak in his first game. I still remember getting home on Thursday night and watching him torch Nebraska. He threw like 4 or 5 touchdowns. And then everyone's like, this is the next guy for Wisconsin football. They've been just a running team for so long. They're going to have a well-balanced offense, and they fell off a cliff. And there's a reason he's now at Florida versus Wisconsin, who, if we're just comparing the state of the two programs, and yes, I know they had to move on from their head coach, but Luke Fickell's a heck of a college football coach. They're in a very good position versus where Florida's at. There's a reason he's there. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out. And like we said, it'll be very interesting to see if Cam Rising isn't able to go, who's going to be that guy? The coaches will know after the spring game. We probably won't know till then either. But we will have. What were you going to say, Sam?
I want to add this. You're talking about a quarterback that just like torched somebody. That USC Utah game from, I think it was it 2019? That 2019 Utah football USC game. No, it wasn't Slovis.
It was JT Daniels.
When JT Daniels got hurt, and they ended up putting in what's his name? Matt Fink. And Matt Fink torched us for 350 yards. Like, I feel like that is kind of the situation that, in my opinion, Graham Mertz is in, because like 351 yards for Matt Fink in one game, and then he just kind of
fell off the face of the earth. Exactly.
It's like escaped into like oblivion. Like, if you're listening to this, Matt Fink, like, I hope you're doing well. But at the same time, like, he just like he laid the biggest game of his life, and then just said, I'm a head out, and then just left. So yeah, like that's another like comparison I think of Graham Mertz too is Matt Fink, which is a name that Utah fans are probably all like going like, oh, Sammy, why are you saying it? Like, oh no. Which I was at that game.
Yeah.
That was a rough ride home from LA to Salt Lake. That was absolutely atrocious, dude. That was not fun.
It's crazy to look back on how many talented, like, or just how many loaded that USC QB room was. But it was also loaded with, I'll say, guys who did end up underwhelming at other schools. We know every time Slovis has bounced around, JT Daniels. So that's just kind of been the way for them as of late. But they're doing okay with their current quarterback right now.
Yeah,
so
they're pretty okay, as he has a Heisman Trophy and is potentially going to be the #1 overall pick in next year's draft.
Exactly. Yes, the USC fans doing all right. And like I said, the quarterback's most important position. So it'll be interesting to see how the Utes get it figured out. You know, there's another very important position that the Utes still need to figure out. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But first, I want to talk to you guys about our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Grand slams, no hitters, and double plays are back. And there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Hey, if you guys listen to this in a few years, you may even be able to do it for a Salt Lake current baseball team if you guys saw the news last week. But for right now, you have to stick to betting with the normal MLB teams. And that's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. You can bet on things like a pitcher to go over on strikeouts, build a same game parlay with your favorite matchup of the day, and so much more. So don't miss a chance to get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. Sammy, most people's biggest question heading into spring ball was the quarterbacks. Mine, just because we know eventually, whether it's the first game or maybe even the fourth at worst, just from what we've heard or believe, like Cam Rising's going to come back. So that's where it's like, to me, backup quarterback's very important. But at the end of the day, best case, I'm an optimist, so I still believe that it's going to be the backup quarterback. What's more important to me is getting the offensive line figured out. And the Utes have taken the steps in doing that, but there's still a lot of unknowns up there. We still don't know exactly who's going to be the left tackle. We've seen Falcon Kalmatule and then Satao Laumea both getting kind of some reps at left, some reps at right too. So you got to figure out who's going to go where. The interior, we know Keaton Bills and Michael Mokfisi is going to be there. Is it going to be Johnny Mae? Is it going to be Jaron Kump? Those are things we need to get figured out. And once again, as you talked about with the quarterbacks, we are not going to know the answer to this probably after the spring game, but we are going to see who looks good against, sometimes in spring ball, you battle with guys and you're like, that's not a good representation of like going against Pac-12 like opposition. With the Utes, it is when you're talking about the Utah defensive line, Aleki Vaimahi, Junior Tafuna, even the guys behind them. This is a loaded group, and these guys could start on, even the backups could start on a lot of the other teams. So even if they don't look outstanding in this game, it's not like it's a major concern, because especially like Tafuna and Vaimahi have looked absolutely dominant during spring ball already. I mean, the defensive line's had a lot of guys who step up, but to me, Junior's been arguably the best one so far in a way. Like Justin Medlock has really shined at linebacker too. Those are the two guys in the front seven, at least to me, who have looked just outstanding. And that's nothing like Lander Barton's looked great too. Those are the two guys I was just like, man, they're just making so many plays out there. So I just think it's going to be very interesting to see what groupings are they going to be in. I expect this offensive line to work together, because I still think it helps to all play together in a game like this. So I'm very interested to see. I'm still like, we trust in Jim Harding. We've talked about it on the show, but it's definitely one of those things where it's like, I'm definitely a little shaken, and I just want to see how it's all going to play out with this group and how they're going to look on Saturday.
I honestly think they'll keep all the ones together, just because you already have that cohesion set together. And then you'll probably see the two line together as well, just because, like I said, that cohesion's already there. They know what to do with each other. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of mixing and matching with offensive lines in spring, especially when it is just a spring scrimmage. I don't think that's going to happen. If there is mixing and matching that's going to happen, it will be happening in fall. It's not happening right now. But, I think I'm more interested to see the state of the two offensive line in live reps versus the two defensive line. I've thought about this before, and like the drop off between the one offensive line and the two offensive line is noticeable. I don't want to say it's like it's like, oh my God, like the two offensive line is like a wet paper towel. It breaks under anything. Like, it's not that. It's just, are they as like solid as the one offensive line? No. But then again, you have a lot of young guys on that two line. Like, it'll be interesting to see if Spencer Fano's in that too offensive line, because if he is, he's just a true freshman who's been on campus for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So 3 or 4 weeks. So it's like you're going to see some errors along the way from that 2 offensive line. But I think the drop off between the 1 defensive line and the 2 defensive line is a lot lower. Like there's not as much of a drop off, because the way that Utah runs their defensive line is they use that cycle method. So like even the guys that are on the 2s, they're still getting reps with the 1s sometimes when the other guys on the 1s need a break. So they're still getting those live action reps and stuff, and they're practicing against the 1s sometimes. So I just think I'm more interested to watch the 2 offensive line versus the 2 defensive line in actually like live work instead of just thud. Because I just want to see how they perform against some of these guys on this 2 defensive line who have actually taken live game reps. So that's where I see this offensive line thing. Like I'm pretty confident that Jim Harding will figure out what 5 guys need to be out there, and he will get it working and he will get it going. But I like for future's sake, I would like to see the 2s.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things. Let's look at the last 2 seasons of Utah football. Bam Olaseni, how essential was he as a guy who didn't start the season, ends up getting inserted? He was huge to the Utes that year. Let's look at last year even. Michael Mokafisi was a guy. We just all assumed Satao Laumea was going to be at right guard still. So then you put Mokafisi in there. He ends up playing a huge role on this team overall. Paul Miley, back when he was the backup to Nick Ford, we saw him have to step up for a lot of the 2021 season, and he did a really good job there. Johnny Maea stepped in a couple times last season, provides some really good plays. So there's always, it's very rare your offensive line stays healthy through an entire season. You always need backups to be ready. And it's still a crazy and exciting that Spencer Fano could be one of those guys for the Utes. And it just speaks to how high his ceiling is. Because, man, if you want to talk about one of the toughest positions to come in and play in your first year, it's the offensive line, especially because you just need to put on strength and everything that goes into that. So it's going to be very interesting to see. And it's going to be very interesting to see for spring ball in general, what other questions we have after the game and what all emerges, as it'll be the last time we get a Utah football game until the real Utah football starts up in this fall when we get action underway in August with Florida and everything. So it's going to be really exciting to see how it ends. And as we said, we talked about spring ball ending. Something else unfortunately came to the end recently, and that was Utah Gymnastics. Now, they did make it as far as they could, so that was the exciting thing. You knew it was always going to be the end, but unfortunately, it didn't go the way they wanted to. They looked great in that first session. And then going into the next session, they finished in 3rd overall. It's actually the 3rd year in a row they finished in 3rd, which is in itself absolutely amazing. But Utah posted a 197.9375, which was the 2nd best score at an NCAA final in program history, as they finished behind Oklahoma and Florida. And then they were ahead of LSU, as we said, the 3rd place finish overall. So not that the Utes wanted it, Sammy, but still an outstanding season.
Yeah, it was an outstanding season, and I think there's so much to look forward to for next season. I know people are going to be like, but they're losing people. Yes, they are. I think 2 of the biggest.
Issa, oh my gosh, what a career!
I nearly cried watching Crystal Issa's final beam routine. I know you're not supposed to have favorites in what you do, but Crystal Issa has been one of the biggest joys to cover in 5 years. She is just always so outgoing, so bubbly. Her personality is one of the best I've ever interacted with. Plus, she's really good at what she does. Yes. I will say I was vastly wrong with one of my predictions when she came in as a freshman. I was like, she's going to score a 10 on bars at least 2 times during her career. She never scored a 10 on bars, but she did get a couple on beams. So
yeah,
that's fine. Whatever, a 10's a 10. Because Crystal was touted as a bars expert when she came in and a bars specialist. So for her to not get a 10 on bars, but to continuously get 10s on beam is also speaks to what Carly Dockendorf has done on that beam. And obviously you're going to lose transfer Abby Brenner. She came in for just 1 year from Michigan. You're going to lose her on vault, floor, and bars. And I think with Brenner, again, yes, you're losing an A+ gymnast, but you're also losing someone who was a amazing personality in that locker room. She was the girl that got everybody up, got everybody going, got everyone's drive up and attention and excitement. And she was also so fun to cover in a year. And I wish we would have gotten her for a little bit longer as well. And then Jillian Hoffman elected to not take one of her many extra years of eligibility she has. Because this is the first season Jill has finished since I want to say 20. I want to say this is the first season she's finished healthy since 2020, maybe. Because she had a season ending. She blew out her Achilles last season. The season before, she blew out her shoulder. So this is the first season that Jill has finished like fully like healthy, because everyone has dinged and their bruise and stuff. But this is the first season she hasn't had a season ending injury since like I want to say like 2020, maybe 2021. I don't know. No, it wouldn't be 2021. It would probably be 2020. But so Jill would have technically had a COVID year and one medical redshirt year. So she technically could have had 2 more years at Utah, but she's electing to go to nursing school instead. So she called it quits. But I think that the future for this Utah team is so extremely bright. You know, the biggest thing is that you have the trio aptly known as Jam coming back, which is Jaden Rucker, Abby Polson, and Miley O'Keefe. Miley O'Keefe just had a historic season. She scored 10 10s in the entire season. Set a new school record for the most 10s in a career on beam. She had back-to-back 10s at regional or at semi. She had one on Thursday, and then she had one last night or Saturday night actually. So Miley O'Keefe's potential is the stars on the sky. I think at the end of her career next year, if Miley O'Keefe is not on the discussion of top 5 Utah gymnasts of all time, there's seriously something wrong, because what she has done for this program is astronomical. Jaden Rucker, she won the national title in vault last year, didn't repeat it this year. But she scored 2 10s this season, which is like amazing for her, because it, like I've said this before, it's like it's so funny that she won a national title on vault last season but didn't ever score a 10 until this season. She's been so close, but she finally got it. And then obviously she's also amazing on floor. And then rounding out the group, you have Abby Polson, who's just amazing on beam and on floor. She really came into her own this season. Like, she had some ups and downs last season, which is kind of to be expected because she had a stellar sophomore season. Like, she was the one that a lot of people were projecting higher than Miley. At times, just because of what Abby was doing. Abby was scoring 10s. Abby was the anchor for that entire sophomore season they had, and Miley was in the 4 or the 5, if I remember correctly. But Abby has really, really figured things out. She's consistently scoring in that 9-9 range on beam. Her floor routine is so fun to watch. So I think those 3 coming back for their 5th years is massive for this program. And you also have 4 girls coming into this program that are very, very, very good gymnasts. I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Farden tries to work his magic in the portal, maybe suggesting some girls, maybe look for other opportunities, because Utah is going to be in a really funky scholarship count situation with next year. But also like we mentioned before we started recording, this is this 25 or this 24 season is going to be the last season that Utah has to deal with COVID restrictions for extra years of scholarships and stuff. So like next year's senior class will be like the last year of like girls that are like, I'm coming back for my 5th year, or no, I'm not. But I wouldn't be surprised if Tom works his magic in the portal again, finds somebody along an Abby Brenner type that can come in and kind of jumpstart some things. But I think there's always always things that need to be addressed in the off season for every single sport. So like for women's basketball, it's like you need to get some more size. Like that's an issue for them, especially with all the girls transferring out. You need to get some size. But then for gymnastics, I think the biggest issue is you need to find some consistent vaulters, because you have Jaden Rucker who's amazing at what she does. McKenna Smith has showed promise this season at times. There's just Miley O'Keefe. If she could learn to throw Yurchenko 1.5 instead of just throwing a Yurchenko full, that would be amazing. Once Grace McCallum's back, you put that Yurchenko 1.5 back in that lineup. You have, if you can get Jalen Gilstrap up to a Yurchenko 1.5, that would also be great. Maybe get Alani Sabato up to a Yurchenko 1.5, or just possibly hitting the portal and finding some girls that can vault. That would be massive to this team. And I know people last night or on Saturday night were saying that Jimmy Pratt needed to be fired. There's like 3 or 4 of the girls that saw that tweet and started saying like, Jimmy has done more for us than any other vault coach we've ever had, because Utah had a vault coach. Utah's vault situation coaching wise was like Kyle Whittingham's offensive coordinator situation for a long time, where they had a new vault coach every single season practically. And now we're in year 2 of the Jimmy Pratt era. So, and you can see there's been some progress for them on that event, but a lot of the girls went to his defense and said, you better not ever say that about Jimmy again, because we love him and we love having him as a coach. I think the other thing that's going to be an off-season task for Tom is making sure Maya Hambrick stays on contract for this team, especially with the rules that now they can sign another coach to be paid. Yeah. So Maya Hambrick is currently the volunteer assistant for the Red Rocks. She choreographs all the floor routines. The girls love her. Maya's so newly removed from the gymnastics world. I think she finished with LSU in either 2018 or 2019, but she's still young enough that she can connect with these girls and create some fun floor routines. And the floor routines we saw from last year in her first year versus this year were a step in the right direction. I still think there's areas to improve, but I think at the end of the day, keeping Maya on staff and keeping her retained is going to be something that's very important, I think. And I think Tom knows that, because a lot of these girls love Maya and love what she does. So those are my 2 big goals for Utah this offseason, is just figure out the vault situation and like make sure Maya stays on contract, because like you've already let one amazing choreographer go, and that was BJ Dawes, who's now at UCLA, and UCLA has all those viral floor routines and those high scoring routines. Yep. So you let her go. So I think you need to keep Maya, because Maya's very, very, very good at what she does.
Yeah, she is, just as this Utah gymnastics team is. Look, it's not ideal. You always want to come out on top, right? But to finish 3rd 3 years in a row is still incredible. We know how many teams in college football would love to make the college football playoff every year and finish inside the top 4. So still incredible that they've made it. I mean, 47 times just making it to nationals itself. Another unbelievable season for Utah gymnastics, and their ceiling is incredibly high. Sammy, gymnastics season. What you got?
Oh, I want to add this. Also, gymnastics season is starting next year with probably one of the biggest meets across the country. It's going to be a neutral site meet at the Maverick Center. I use the term neutral site loosely because the Gymternet will kill me if I say it's not a neutral site, because to them it's not a neutral site because it's so close to the University of Utah, but whatever. So it's going to be nationally broadcast on either ABC or ESPN. I can't remember which one, but it's going to be Utah, Oklahoma, LSU, and UCLA. So 3 of those 4 teams were in the national title meet. Technically, in my opinion, UCLA should have been in the national title meet also, but like, I'm not going to get into that right now, because I've said my piece on why I think that they should redo the way that they determine who's the final 4 on the floor. Yeah. But I think UCLA should have been in that place other than Florida. But yeah, Utah, Oklahoma, LSU, UCLA, it's going to be with that being the first meet of the season, the tone is going to be set early on in the season, especially because it's the reigning national title holders versus 3 other teams that are hungry for it. So
yeah, and to your point, I mean, it's still like in Utah's backyard, basically. Obviously.
Oh yeah, the Maverick Center has been called Utah's neutral site because Utah fans show up, because you got to know, Best of Utah happens there. The Wasatch Classic, which is a new podium style event that started this year, that happens at the Maverick Center, but Utah wasn't a part of the Wasatch Classic this year. Pac-12 championships just got extended there, so it's like it's kind of like home court advantage for Utah to a certain extent because of distance, but there's always a good amount of teams that show up. Like at Pac-12s, like UCLA fans show up and show out, Cal fans show up and show out, so it's like, it's not like it's like Utah doesn't let any other fans in. Like, there are still a good chunk of fans, and I wouldn't be surprised if at this first meet of next season, if it is Utah and Oklahoma fans are like 1A, 1B in terms of like turnout, and then like UCLA fans are like 3, and then LSU fans are 4.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to see how it all works out. And like you said, it's now the season's ended, so tension turns to the future. And speaking of the future, Sammy, what are some of the things you have coming up with Utes?
Obviously spring football coming down the stretch, so we'll have some content coming out this week and culminating with the spring game on Saturday. I'm not gonna give a time frame as to when it's gonna happen, but with this postseason for gymnastics coming up, there's gonna be some roster breakdowns, some outlooks, some what do they need to do to win next year pieces. So just keep an eye out for that, and then just random summer content because we're at that point where there's not a lot going on. It's just track and field, softball, baseball.
Yep. So make sure you guys head over to Ute Zone. Also give Sammy a follow at S_Mora99, as you guys can follow her on Twitter. And speaking of Ute Zone, Dante Guardi will be joining us on tomorrow's show to talk about the biggest winners of spring ball so far and who needs a big week coming up for this Utah football program. But thank you guys for making Locked On Utes your first listen every day. And Sammy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you guys tomorrow.